We cannot pretend that we're immune. We are not immune.
As we sit down with Myron Demkiw, the police chief responsible for the largest city in Canada, the focus quickly turns to Bondi Beach, Australia, where 15 people were murdered in an anti-Semitic attack on the first night of Chanukah.
And I think every Jewish person in this city fears this could have happened in Toronto. Could this happen here?
Well, listen, I think when you reflect on what happened in Australia, it is a moment, first of all, to step back and recognize the incredible fear and concerns in our community and the rise of anti-Semitism that's happened globally, but particularly in the city.
After October 7th, 2023, when Hamas attacked Israel and war broke out, the Toronto Police Service initiated Project Resolute to monitor events and demonstrations surrounding the Israel-Hamas war and ensure the safety of Jewish and Muslim communities. The chief says hate crimes are way up, and since then, hundreds of charges have been laid.
Repeatedly, the most targeted group has been the Jewish community. That's been a trend line, not just in the last couple of years. That's been a trend line for many years.
Demkiw says it's time to recognize the harm of anti-Semitism and what inaction can do.
As the chief, I will tell you, I do have concerns around extremism and the rise of some of the rhetoric we see time and time again, whether it's on campuses or in other places.
The chief says the attack at Bondi Beach is a call to action, not just for police and security officials, but for the community as a whole.
If you know people who are making choices in their life that are dangerous, you know that there's radicalization or extremist views evolving in an unhealthy way, you need to reach out and tell someone.
Reach out and tell someone. You just watched Toronto Police Chief Myron Demkiw in a year-end interview that took place in late December with a local television reporter. He lives in an alternate reality. Toronto, Canada is home to a Jewish community of more than 200,000 people. And on Myron Demkiw's watch, it has become one of the most hostile cities in the world for Jews to live and work. I grew up in Toronto and lived there for 50 years. I visit frequently and remain very connected to the city through friends, family, and professional activity. And I happened to be there on October 7, 2023, when the city erupted, at first, in joy, as the slaughter of Israeli civilians was ongoing. Islamists and leftist progressives celebrated. They celebrated the slaughter. In many other cities across Canada, celebrations like this took place as well, around the world, actually. But in Toronto, I was shocked and honestly terrified. I wasn't surprised to see that there's anti-Semitism. But the ferociousness, yes. How it went viral in a snap, yes. Since December 2022, Myron Demkiw has been the chief of police in Toronto, the fourth largest police force in North America, after New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Toronto and Philadelphia are tied for fourth place. Chief Demkiw has declined to speak with State of Tel Aviv and beyond, in spite of several requests. But the invitation remains open, always. Behind closed doors, Chief Demkiw reportedly explains his approach to policing the ongoing violence targeting Jews in Toronto as one of keeping the peace. From what I can see, he's doing anything but. Jews will remain fair game in Toronto. And you think I'm exaggerating? Well, stay with us as we document in this episode the manner in which Toronto police have handled this incessant, unrelenting violence targeting Jewish Canadians. I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel, longtime Toronto resident, and I believe that it is way past time to shine the light on those who are accountable but choose to duck and avoid their responsibility. Let's do this. This podcast is the second of a two-part series focusing on anti-Semitism and policing in Toronto. Home to more than 200,000 Jews. After Israel, the US, and France, Canada is the next largest Jewish community in the world, with approximately 375,000 in total. Most live in Toronto and Montreal. If you have not watched episode 1 of this series, I suggest you do so. It will give you a lot of helpful context and background. We had intended to publish this episode, part 2, on Sunday, December 14th. But, as you'll recall, that was the day that the Bondi Beach Chanukah massacre happened. So we waited. Then Iran happened. In this episode, we continue to focus on a November 5th attack on IDF Reserve soldier Jonathan Karten, who was in town to speak to a small group of Jewish students from Toronto's Metropolitan University. We discuss part of what went down on November 5th in part 1 of this series. You'll find the link to that episode in the podcast notes. Today, we focus on how the police handled that incident and others. What happened in Toronto in the immediate aftermath of Bondi was insane. Mere hours after the Bondi attack, Toronto police protected and facilitated the regular Sunday harassment of Jews in the north end of the city. This harassment of Jews included, on December 14th, a street performer with speakers and a microphone, and he belted out a song with original lyrics celebrating the murder of Jews, the destruction of Israel. We get into that in detail in this podcast. But first, here is local Toronto radio host and celebrity Ben Mulrooney, who also happens to be the son of former Prime Minister Brian Mulrooney. He's specifically addressing anti-Semitism in Toronto and what went down on December 14th, right after the Bondi massacre.
This is not just an isolated event. Listen, the lighting of the menorah is happening in Jewish communities around the world. It happened on Bondi Beach, as it is happening everywhere where there is a Jewish community. So just because it happened there doesn't mean it cannot happen here. And a Conservative MP, Roman Baber, was at the lighting of the menorah here in Toronto. And let's listen to his description of the event. You would think that this would happen surrounded by peace and joy, not in Toronto.
Right across the street, they're threatening me in real time, but I got news for them. I'm in a great mood because we just lit the menorah collectively, and bet you that regardless of whatever it is you do, we're going to light the menorah for another 2,000 years. There you go. Chag Sameach, everybody. Thank you.
You can hear the protests happening across the street. And these aren't protests. These are what are you protesting? This is a religious event. If this were to happen at any other religious event, those people screaming would rightly be called bigots. Bigots. And they would be marginalized, and rightly so. They are bigots. Full stop. And I want to go back to what our mayor said. To the Toronto Jewish community, I know the fear you feel is real. While celebrating your faith, gathered with loved ones, or simply being visible, you deserve to live freely, openly, and safely in our city. Madam Mayor, that is, I don't know if it's deliberately obtuse. I don't know how you square those two things. You have the power to do something about the bigots. You have the power to stop them from entering Jewish communities while all they are trying to do is celebrate their faith. You don't want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, fine. But you don't get to go on social media and deliberately mislead people that you care about them. You don't care about them. You don't. Let's call things what they are. If you want to proudly stand with those bigots who want to scream and hurl epithets at the Jews, you go right ahead. But you don't get to turn around and say, oh, this is such a shame. You have the power to do something and you don't. So stop this. Stop calling something that it's not. You are not an ally of the Jews. You are not an ally of these Torontonians who just want to live in peace. You're not. You're doing nothing to help them. You're only making matters worse. And it is insulting to suggest that you care about them one iota. One iota.
I've documented the surging anti-Semitism in Toronto and Canada for more than 2 years now. In late 2024, I did a mini-series focusing on what passed for policing and continues to pass for policing when pro-Hamas thugs descend on Jewish neighborhoods in Toronto. It's appalling. The links to those podcasts from last year are in the notes to this podcast. Since Bondi, I have written and published podcasts and articles dealing with the situation there and the stark similarities to the environment in Toronto, and I'll continue to stay on this story. All that distinguishes what happened in Sydney at Bondi Beach from Toronto so far is luck. Also on Sunday, December 14th, Prime Minister Mark Carney at the Chanukah candle-lighting ceremony in Ottawa. Here's what he had to say.
Resilience of the Maccabees. That spirit, tragically, sadly, has had to be drawn upon for millennia. Tragically and sadly, shamefully and persistently has had to be drawn upon right here in Canada over the course of the last few years. The government will always stand with you contre la haine,
against hate,
l'intimidation.
bullying.
Mais c'est pas suffit.
But it's
Ça ne
not
suffit
enough.
pas. It's
It's
not
not
enough.
enough.
It is not enough to protect the Jewish community. It is not enough for Jewish Canadians to live without fear. Canada is not Canada unless all members of the Jewish community can fully participate in all aspects of Canadian life. This is about thriving. This is about taking the light and spreading it today across our country and through generations, so that this is the last generation that has to struggle against hate.
Mark Carney has presided over a period in Canada when extreme anti-Semitism flourishes. His policies and actions, domestically and internationally, have created an environment in Canada in which it is not only acceptable to demonize Jews, but seems to be encouraged. Carney is unfazed by the toxic, widespread Jew hatred in Canada. He does absolutely nothing to address it. Virulent anti-Semitism has taken very firm root in Canada's largest city, Toronto. Sydney has a community of 50,000 Jews, more or less. Toronto, more than 200,000. We will be looking carefully in this episode at the way in which the Toronto Police Force has overseen this period of constantly intense and increasing anti-Semitism, the incitement to violence and hatred targeting Jews. The tragedy of Bondi is that it happened, and it was also so easily avoidable. And that is compounded by the fact that it could happen again in so many places in the world where Jews have lived peacefully and peaceably. Shepherd Plaza is at the intersection of Bathurst Street and Shepherd Avenue. The surrounding neighborhood is heavily Jewish. The shops at Shepherd Plaza cater to Jewish tastes. Since October 7th, Canadian Jews have assembled every Sunday afternoon at Shepherd Plaza to show their support for Israel and their Jewish brethren worldwide. Soon after they began gathering for this weekly event, supporters of Palestine and Hamas decided to organize counter-demonstrations at Bathurst and Shepherd. Week after week, they shouted hateful slogans at the Jews and their supporters. They blasted offensive chants on loudspeakers. They harassed Jews going about their lives quietly. Often, they would venture into the plaza to bully, taunt, and threaten Jews. I covered this ongoing event in the series I did last year. Since that time, the situation has worsened considerably, to the point that on Sunday, December 14th, hours after the Bondi massacre, the Jew haters in Toronto not only showed up at Bathurst and Shepherd, but they blasted this song. They sang in Arabic on the street with loudspeakers, and the police, They stood around. They did nothing. I'll show the video clip now of the Islamists inciting violence and hatred openly under the watchful and protective eyes of Toronto police officers. As we show the clip, I will read in English the lyrics that they're singing in Arabic. By force, we will teach you a lesson. By force, we are going to show you. By force, we'll trample those mustaches of yours and stomp on your dignity. By force, we came to your checkpoint. By force, we will smash your head. And my mother is Palestinian. By force, O son of the Jewish mother, do not step out of the courtyard. Bring the gear and weapons. Victory is near. By Allah, it is near. Come to the success. Come to the success. Oh, the grandeur of the clash. Oh, fighter. Oh, masked one. Allah, bless the young brave fighters. Those lyrics I just read are a sample. You get the drift. That was sung, that song, in Toronto on Sunday, December 14th, hours after the Bondi Beach Chanukah massacre, under police protection. Today, we continue to focus on the attack on IDF reservist Jonathan Karten that took place, as we mentioned, on November 5th. We delve into the broader environment in Toronto that makes it possible for a Jewish man like Jonathan Karten to be attacked in broad daylight. He was set to speak to a small group of university students in downtown Toronto. How is it that he could be violently attacked by a masked mob, screaming for his death, an attempted lynching, as one woman who attended the aborted event termed it? How can all this happen in broad daylight in downtown area of Toronto, crawling with police officers? So let's now go back to November 5th and take a careful look at some key elements, what went down that day. In the moments immediately following the violence in the attack involving Karten and others, 5 individuals, all women in their 20s, who had been masked and wearing clothing to conceal distinctive physical traits, including gender, were arrested by Toronto police in a nearby subway station, and they were charged with various offenses, including forcible entry, member of an unlawful assembly, obstruction of a police officer, and assault of a police officer. 1 week later, on November 12th, 26-year-old Khalil Ibrahim was charged with forcible entry, unlawful assembly while masked, property damage, and interference. It is believed that Mr. Ibrahim was wielding the long drill bit that was used as a weapon in the attack, and also used his body weight to shatter the glass door that Jonathan Karten had closed and had struggled to keep closed. All of this, again, was covered in part 1 of this podcast. Mr. Ibrahim allegedly slammed into the glass door. It shattered, and Mr. Ibrahim ran away. He ran away, masked, and presumably with his drill bit in hand. Khalil Ibrahim has something of a past with Toronto police. He was arrested and charged previously in April 2025, charged with arson, possession of an incendiary material for arson, and common nuisance. Why? Well, as you can see in the photograph on the screen now, that's Khalil Ibrahim. He's alleged to have climbed a scaffolding outside the Israeli consulate in Toronto, doused an Israeli flag with a flammable liquid, and set it alight. Flames fell on the protesters below. That matter has not yet gone to trial. Okay, back to November 5th on Elm Street, where the Toronto Metropolitan University students and Jonathan Karten had gathered. After the protesters had been cleared out of the premises, a police officer asked Jonathan to tell him what had happened. We're going to show you a clip now where Jonathan is explaining the details sequentially to the police officer as to what transpired that afternoon.
Right now, just make sure no one steps in and out of the crime scene, so that will be a crime scene. How did this happen?
I was on the other side of the store. They were on this side of the store. 4 or 5 of them. They were pushing through the door. This is a glass door. I was on the other side. Everyone was against the wall. And I was holding the door closed. As everyone was trying to push through the door. It was 4 or 5 of them, and I was holding the door. And one of them pushed through the door. Right? And then broke all of this. Right? And then I went through the door. I basically went through the door.
2 people made it inside.
2 people made it inside, yeah. And then I tried to grab the guy that pushed through the door, and he ran away, and everyone was continuing yelling and posing a threat, and then he knocked me after he broke my glass.
As you can see, Jonathan is very cool and controlled. In the next clip, a police officer asks Jonathan if he believes he was targeted by the mob. Here's his response.
Do you feel it was the event that was targeted, or were you targeted personally?
I think it's both. I was targeted as a Jew, as an Israeli. I think the event was targeted for being supportive of the state of Israel.
It is worth noting that not a single one of the masked individuals who has been arrested since the incident on November 5th has been charged with a hate-related crime. Not one. You've seen the video evidence. You've seen the clips. What do you think? In the week after the incident, here is a clip of the shrieking masked activists. They've broken into the meeting space arranged by the Jewish students, and they've done so with what appears to be the sole intention of disrupting and terrorizing. When asked to leave several times by the students and by Jonathan Karten and the proprietor of the space, they refused to leave. They just refused. So, in order to secure the space and protect the students, Jonathan Karten literally picks up the protesters one by one and moves them to a room where they remain until police arrive on the scene. Watch this.
These people caused the damage over here. They assaulted me and they broke our own property. So now I'm going to physically remove them from the premises. These terrorists forced us to barricade the doors. They came 40 strong. Now block it, block it. I need these over here.
Why are these activists so bold? Why do they feel they can act with such impunity? Why do they target Jews so openly and violently and constantly? Well, I'll take the bait and answer my own question, and I think it's because the Toronto police have allowed this conduct to continue unpunished, unaddressed, since October 7th, 2023. It's not that complicated. The intensity and severity of the activists' conduct just continues to get worse and worse. There's no consequence, no accountability. In fact, one could be forgiven for concluding that they are rewarded in terms of being allowed to freely spread their toxic hatred and never having to pay a price, never having to answer to authority, never being held legally accountable. This is not the society in which I was raised, in which I raised my kids. Toronto has become an Islamist's paradise, a vigilante's playground, and a dangerous environment for Jews. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow has made her views on Israel and Jews very clear. She's refused to attend even the most benign Jewish community events, and she has never, ever expressed any concern over the constant pro-Palestinian and progressive incitement to violence and hatred targeting Jews. On November 3rd, 2 days before the Karten incident, Mayor Chow made these comments at a gathering of Canadian Muslims and sympathizers. She is unequivocally condemning Israel for having committed genocide. She says that conclusively. Here's a short clip of that moment.
We feel the pain of what happens around the world. The genocide in Gaza impacts us all. Our common bond, our shared humanity is tested. And I will speak out when children anywhere are feeling the pain and violence and hunger.
Shortly after Mayor Chow made these comments on genocide, she approved the raising of a Palestinian flag in a ceremony in a major civic square in Toronto. Chow was not present that day, but what happened grabbed headlines around the world. A Canadian patriot playing the national anthem on speakers very close to where the flag-raising ceremony was taking place was told by a Toronto police officer to turn it off, to turn off the playing of the national anthem. Have a look.
Excuse me, don't touch my property, first of all. That's all Canada you just disrespected. Do you understand that? Do you understand what you just did? You disrespected our country, ma'am. Glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God bless Canada!
I can assure you, the Toronto police have never pulled the plug, literally, on a speaker set up in a public place by the pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic activists. They've not pulled the plug in public squares, not as they move through quiet residential neighborhoods with large Jewish populations, not once. Things are different today. They're even worse in some ways than they were a year or two ago. The pro-Hamas Free Palestine crowd continue to protest, and they're even more aggressive about taking their views into the quiet residential streets of a Jewish neighborhood at Bathurst and Shepherd. They openly taunt residents, people who are just going about their lives quietly on a Sunday afternoon. They taunt them in front of their children for being baby killers, and whatever slur seems to pop into their heads. Police stand around and seem to do very little, if anything. In the following clip from Sunday, November 9th, just days after the Karten incident, you can see the protesters yelling at a female resident. She's standing in her driveway. She suggested politely that they take their protest to a more appropriate location. One man turns to her. He points at her, yelling, "Do you teach your kids how to kill babies? Zionist, you don't own this." He's speaking, of course, of the sidewalk. He continues, "This is not occupied Palestine, okay?" You can watch the clip here.
Fleeing of its population that have no plans of return since the creation of this state in 1948. Whoa. Her population is dwindling by the second.
Genocide no more! Oh, fuck yourself. This is public, this is public. You don't own it. This is not... We're gonna stand here, we're gonna stand here.
Guys, just go. Let's go.
Yeah, you teach your kids how to kill babies? Yeah? A Zionist? Zionist? You don't own this. This is not occupied Palestine, okay?
I actually do need to get my car to the driveway.
Yeah, we're over here.
Be a decent human being. Be a decent human being. Teach your kids how to be decent humans. Teach them not how to kill babies like Zionists do, okay?
I'm not the one intimidating people. No one intimidating no one. You're the one intimidating us by telling us to move along. I am moving along. You have no reason to move.
Stop threatening us, okay? Stop.
Okay. Was this problem 2,000 years ago? Was this problem 3,000 years ago?
No, I actually just need to get out of my driveway.
Okay, so your whole driveway is wide open.
No one's preventing you.
No one's preventing you.
What do you, guys?
Yeah, so go along.
Guys, what do you call? What do you call us?
Come on, your children are watching. Teach them some respect.
Guys.
This is what they teach.
I have a question. What do you call a Zionist Karen? A Karen.
Yeah, apparently the sidewalk is not theirs also. There is promised them 2,000 years ago.
We pay property taxes.
So do we.
So what do we?
No, actually,
So do you think we're subhuman? We're below you?
Toronto
don't have a right
to given across, distributed across the whole entire Toronto.
Absolutely,
Okay?
yes,
Yes, they are. Exactly. So there
We
you
don't
go.
have anything to do with another country.
we don't have anything to do with
like,
that.
move on.
Sorry, what did you say?
I have nothing to do with another foreign country they have issues with.
But we're not even doing anything.
why was she
Why was she
antagonizing? You were just walking by.
No, it's been over 2 years. It's been loud.
Okay.
Kids can't sleep during the day. We have nothing to do with whatever your issues are.
Okay.
Okay, we're paying
So we were simply walking by.
No, not you guys. Just in general. Like the whole
Guys,
thing over
if you're walking along, continue. Carry on.
That attitude is only going to ensure I stay here all night long. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right? Next time, know your audience.
They have some stuff they give you.
Here we go again, Sunday, November 23rd. Protesters returned to the same neighborhood. I've selected some choice clips to give you a feel for what went on and what goes on. Here's another one. We see an inspector with Toronto Police, a senior law enforcement officer engaging, I'm going to say, a little rudely, but only so with the Jewish people who showed up to voice their strong disgust and concern. As always, they were peaceful. But Inspector Cavallo, pictured in this video, lost his cool with the Jews. He did not do this with the pro-Hamas crowd. Week after week, they are coddled. It's just the Jews who are told to go away in their own neighborhood. The Jews can't walk on the sidewalk because Inspector Cavallo, well, he's had enough, as he says. Here's the clip.
Enough! Enough! I've had enough! We're stopping this! Please stand back! Continue! Stop! Please! That's all I'm asking. I don't want any interaction. I've got to keep the peace. That's my job. I'm trying to do that. I'm just trying to keep you guys separate.
In the next clip, you hear a man speaking with a police officer. What does the cop say? We're doing our best. Well, with the greatest respect, we've been hearing that for 2 years now, and it is really unclear exactly what the police seem to think they're doing. Why are the Hamas protesters free to roam and taunt and yell and incite hatred at will? And the Jews are treated very, very differently.
In your opinion, it hasn't. We've done our best, and we are still trying to do our best to maintain the peace.
We're trying to cooperate with TPS as much as
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah.
We stayed away for 4 weeks in our own neighborhood. We stayed away to help the police do their job.
Yes.
But a lot of people are complaining that nothing is changing. It's all staying exactly the same. They're coming in the neighborhoods to there's nothing. I don't want any interaction.
Why are you yelling at Gigi, not at them?
I'm yelling at everybody.
And that's their best. This, apparently, is what Toronto police regard as keeping the peace. In truth, it looks to me that police officers interpret keeping the peace to mean that the Jew haters are protected and allowed to roam about unimpeded, screaming their hateful, insightful screeds. And the Jews, well, you can see for yourself. It's a weekly activity for the pro-Hamas crowd to descend on the neighborhood at Bathurst and Shepherd with hostility, baiting people just walking around, living their lives. The constant anger and aggression that they visit upon this neighborhood is indescribable, and nobody does anything to stop it. Here's yet another clip from the same area in November 2025. There are hundreds of videos like this. And the police, what do they say to the Jewish man walking on the sidewalk in his neighborhood? "We don't need you here," as he directs him to leave.
Why'd you pull over in the first place? Why did he pull over in the first place? Why did he pull over in the first place?
I'm the head of cardiac surgery.
Good for you.
Why don't you come sometime over there?
Yeah. Oh, is that a threat?
I'll help you out.
Is that a threat?
I'll help you out.
Is that a threat?
No, it's not a threat. I'll help you out because I'm a human being.
What's your name?
Because I'm a human being.
What's your name?
We don't need you here.
The police never tell the masked thugs who come to the area with the sole purpose of intimidating and harassing Jews. They never tell them to leave. How about starting with removing the mask and sunglasses? There are so many ways in which the law could and should be applied in Toronto and across Canada to deal with this incitement to violence, hatred, and harassment of Jews. But it is not dealt with. Just in case Chief Demkiw or Prime Minister Karten are listening, Criminal Code, Sections 65, 66, 251. You can start there. Or the Preventing Persons from Concealing Their Identity During Riots and Unlawful Assemblies Act. Could it be clearer? Are these assemblies unlawful? Pretty sure they are under the statute. If there was any political will, and if the law enforcement community gave a fig, they'd have interpreted these provisions collectively and managed the Jew hatred that they have instead allowed to metastasize. The Chief of Police, the Mayor of Toronto, the Premier of Ontario, and the Prime Minister of Canada have all made decisions not to deal in any meaningful way with rampant and intensifying anti-Semitism. All levels of government and the police blather on about freedoms, freedom of expression, speech, assembly. They knowingly misrepresent to the public the scope of such freedoms. No freedoms are absolute. They are all subject to being limited when they encroach on the freedoms of others. That's the basis of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Balancing. I won't even get into the myriad civil statutes that could and should have been applied to manage this ongoing violent Jew hatred. But no, a decision clearly has been made that the freedoms of the pro-Hamas masked Jew haters in Toronto and elsewhere in Canada are paramount. You can see for yourself how the police treat and speak to the Jews. Draw your own conclusions. Believe it or not, there's more. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but trust me, these are just the choice bits. It seems that most people have been hoping that it will all blow over, magically go away. But if you look at the demographics of Canada and Toronto and the ideology of our governments at all levels, there is no reason to be optimistic. Not being negative, just pragmatic, looking at the facts as they are, not as I prefer them to be. On November 10th, just after the Jonathan Karten Toronto Metropolitan University incident and the march in Bathurst Manor, radio host Greg Brady discussed this issue of the repeated incursions into Bathurst Manor, the neighborhood, by anti-Semitic protesters. He had on hand a former very senior Toronto police officer, Hank Idsinga, and the president of the Toronto Police Association, Clayton Campbell. We've edited the clip to focus on their comments regarding the fears among Jewish people in Toronto. Have a listen.
I think the response has been dialed back a little bit, and I don't want to see it, and I don't want to see these protest groups in the residential neighborhoods of the Jewish community growing at all. Like I said, it's terrible, and I've spoken to people in the Jewish community. They're afraid to go out for walks at night. They're afraid to go for walks during the day.
Yeah,
that should not be happening in this city whatsoever.
This is where I come back to. I understand the frustration. I actually don't understand. I feel for the frustration with the Jewish community when they're having this in their neighborhoods. I wouldn't want it, and I would be scared, and I wouldn't want to go for walks with my children if this was going on either. Please don't put your frustration or focus on the men and women on the ground trying to do their best. This needs to be escalated up to ultimately the chief and the command and the decision makers to say what are they going to enforce. I think it's one thing you saw in the report that came out that said officers are fearful of making decisions because they'll be blamed for decisions that aren't supported, right? They wouldn't be supported by commands.
This fear that they speak about is a direct consequence of the way in which Toronto police, under the leadership of Myron Demkiw, have approached law enforcement when Jews are involved. In fairness, the rot that we're talking about in Toronto is widespread in Canada. University administrators have parroted the kinds of lines that are used by police. This is about free speech, they say. They love to talk about free speech, freedom to protest, etc., etc. And they know well that these freedoms are not absolute and that they are being abused and used to incite hatred and violence targeting Jews. One would surmise that many of these events and much of this conduct satisfies the threshold for criminal code offenses in Canada. But the police seem to be reluctant to invoke these provisions when it comes to protecting Jews. There's an organization working hard to draw attention to this two-tier society, which prevails now in Toronto and many places across Canada. Again, when it comes to Jews. The Alliance of Canadians Combating Antisemitism is a not-for-profit organization that brings together many Jewish groups or those who support Jewish communities and Jewish people. It puts them under one umbrella, and it was co-founded by two very seasoned and highly regarded criminal lawyers, Rochelle Dierenfeld and Mark Sandler. In the week following the November 5th incident, Mark Sandler published two very sharp statements in the organization's weekly bulletin. One of these memos included an open letter that Mark Sandler had written to Toronto Metropolitan University President Mohammed Lashi. Here is an excerpt from Sandler's open letter to Lashi. Your administration, he writes, has shown no meaningful commitment to fostering an environment where all members of the community can safely engage in respectful dialogue. Jews cannot even express support for the existence of the State of Israel without adverse consequences. Some members of the TMU faculty have been complicit in marginalizing Jewish students, faculty, and staff. And that same week, in his report to Alliance subscribers regarding the November 5th incident and the initial 5 arrests, Mark Sandler summed up the boundless tolerance and enabling of vicious Jew hatred in Toronto. I'm reading straight from his dispatch now, but you'll see it on the screen in a moment. The attackers will absolutely fall back on the allegation, he writes, that Israel is committing a genocide and that all IDF soldiers are war criminals. Students for Justice in Palestine at TMU calls them all Zionist murderers and shows imagery of IDF soldiers with their eyes X'd out. Simply put, Sandler continues to write, there is no shortage of space or tolerance on TMU's campus for anti-Israel activists to make these allegations, even when they rise to the level of hate speech. The attackers are equally intent on suppressing any contrary views or allowing anyone to hear from IDF soldiers who are in a position to challenge those on-campus narratives. Sandler continues to write, this is happening across North America. as anti-Israel activists seek to ban any IDF soldiers from even being heard. There is no room for true freedom of expression on university campuses or apparently in relation to TMU, even off campus, unless the expression adheres to an anti-Israel orthodoxy. Perhaps, Sandler writes, it is time for these anti-Israel advocates to stop misleadingly assert that they support freedom of speech and academic freedom when they support nothing of the sort. Toronto and Canada are in a very, very bad way, alarmingly so. Keep in mind that I met with Jonathan Karten just 1 week after the attack in Toronto. His concern for the Canadian community is profound, and he's more motivated than ever, he says, to keep standing up for Jewish freedom and dignity. Listen to Jonathan.
For me, it's important to fight this age-old hate, the same hate that my grandparents survived, that my parents maintained to protect us from, and that now our generation has to take up the mantle and do the same.
Did this experience change you in any way? I mean, it's traumatic, it's intense, and even for a strong soldier like yourself and a successful person in civilian life, how do you reflect on that incident?
I don't think it changed my views. I always knew the threats for the Jews in the diaspora, but it's definitely changed my fervor. I think that it's now time for Israel to help Jews in the diaspora a bit more directly. Whereas our war is coming to a close, their war has just begun. And the Jews that remain in the United States and Canada and Europe have to either learn to become stronger and fight for their safety, for their livelihood, for their security, or come home, come to Israel. There's no place for anyone to be in the middle anymore.
Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing so openly, clearly.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking care of those people who, had you not been there, I really shudder to imagine what might have transpired. After almost 2 months post-Bondi of doing nothing, earlier this month in February, Chief Demkiw and the Toronto Police issued this notice, which you see on the screen now. The Toronto Jewish Community Advisory Table, they write, is a time-limited, governance-focused advisory body established to strengthen meaningful engagement between the board and Toronto's Jewish community, with an emphasis on systemic issues, oversight, and public accountability. I mean, seriously? Anyone can apply. And whoever is selected to join this board will have the opportunity to meet and talk and have no authority or power to do anything. And the Chief of Police of Toronto seems to think that this is a good idea, necessary. It's just more performative nonsense. It delays, it does nothing to actually enforce the law and ensure the safety and security of Jewish residents in Toronto, which is the function, the primary function of the police. In my view, it's an appalling dereliction of duty. Thanks for being here. And I'd like to acknowledge the generosity of my dear friend and supporter of State of Tel Aviv and Beyond, Andrea Marcus, for generously sponsoring this episode, as well as part 1 of this mini-series. Andrea is a proud Jewish Torontonian and wildly talented artist. So thank you, Andrea, for helping us to get this material and information out to the public in Canada and everywhere. We have viewers and listeners all over the world. People need to know what's going on. It's not just in Sydney. For those of you watching and listening, if you're interested in sponsoring a future podcast episode, please contact me directly. My email address is Vivian, that's Vivian, @stateoftelaviv.com. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers for being here. Please, if you do not already, consider supporting our work through either a paid subscription or make a one-time contribution to Buy Me a Coffee. Links to both sites are in the podcast notes. And yes, as you can see by what I'm wearing, it's a very chilly day in Israel today, and we're hoping for a peaceful, quiet, and sunny weekend. Have a good one. We love hearing from you, so please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to vivian@stateoftelaviv.com. That's VIVIAN@stateoftelaviv.com. And if you go to our website, stateoftelaviv.com, you can find the subscribe button and take it from there. Hope that you do that. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Jan Zabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy, who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager who pitches in on everything. Thank you, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team, and thank you, listeners, for being here. Until next time, stay safe.